teaching my children about drugs is like a no-go.
I have not talked to my children about alcohol use yet.
A lot of my discussions with my kids over the last couple of years have come from a real fear-based place, which I try to kind of do my own work and clean all that up before I bring it into the conversations, but I am afraid.
I think I thought about my children and addiction before I even had children. My struggle with alcohol began at the age of 18. I grew up by no fault of anyone else, just a very highly anxious child. And when I took that first drink, I felt free, really, really free. And within about a year and a half, I was drinking 22 hours a day. My fear is that he'll try something and feel what I felt, that hellish roller coaster that I was on until I finally got off.
I think some of the misconceptions around drugs, alcohol, is if we have these conversations with our kids, that we might be inadvertently like promoting that it's okay to do those things, when these conversations are really about safety, about health, about knowing what's out there.
In order to have tough conversations, we have to have a strong relationship. And that's really where a lot of prevention comes from around drugs and alcohol. We want to make sure they don't feel like it's a subject they can't talk about at all, because then they're less likely to ask for help if they really need it. So we want to start talking to kids about drugs and alcohol at early ages, usually during elementary school. And the reasoning for that is that we want kids to already know that these things exist and to start rehearsing how they might behave around them by the time they first encounter them. We don't want to be talking to kids about drugs and alcohol after they've already come into contact with it, because at that point, the main messages they're going to be getting are from peers.
If you just institute it at an early age, then they're more moldable, and then it just becomes a thing that you talk about.
I think we just try to be very non-taboo and open about things.
We've taken that approach with marijuana now. We've told them about what it can do to your brain and your developing brain as a child.
They're gonna be with peers. They're gonna have peer pressure. It's just a fact of life. And they have to make those decisions. Do I do this or do I do that? As long as you've established the groundwork and the roots for them, that this is what happens. You know what self-medicating is. You know what sort of wild behavior is. I think that, to me, makes me feel good. I think he's got it.
I would say we started talking about it probably at 12. The predisposition that my children have to addiction is high. And so we've always kept a very open dialogue in our home about addiction. I want to put the fear in them, but not so much so that they can't enjoy a social drink when they're older.
When parents have an addiction history, we often encourage them to tell the child because that could be a risk factor. But we don't encourage parents to tell kids kind of stories from the front of their own drug use or alcohol use as teenagers. It's better to say to kids, look, I can be honest with you, these things were present when I was a kid, and then to pivot back to saying, and I want to make sure you make smart decisions, and that I support you in doing that.
I know, we all know that our kids are going to do stupid things, and they're going to make bad choices just like we did.
All I care is that they call me and don't get in a car.
What you want to think about as a parent is being a realist about the fact that your teen might be coming into contact with drugs and alcohol, and at the same time giving them the messages about why you want them to not use or delay use.
With many of these conversations with your teens, right, there is a balance between not having the conversation around drugs and alcohol be taboo, and also being very clear about what your limits are and what the rules are. And if, they do experiment or something does happen, you also want to ensure that they know they can come to you to be safe. Please give me a call if you're at a party and you drink. Do not get in a car. I won't yell at you. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about what that means afterwards in terms of limits, or, how is it that we can prevent this from happening again.
I get a call from the school assistant principal that he's been caught buying a vape pen, a marijuana vape pen. What I did after he got suspended is I did more role playing. So like role playing with somebody is smoking around you and they pass it to you. You know, somebody is asking you to buy. You hear somebody is a smoker and you ask them, you know, like just a lot more like role playing around all those things. So he had like real vocabulary that was at the tip of his tongue.
We're very open about everything. Like there's nothing we can't talk about. So he went to a party one time and when he got in the car, he's like, Dad, you know, I drank, and I could tell that he had more than what he, you know. I wasn't like shocked by it. I wasn't like, oh, you know, why did you do this? I just knew that sooner or later he was gonna experiment or do something. You know, when it comes to like drugs and things like that, like that's where you can get into trouble because you get high or you get intoxicated, and then you end up doing something that after you're like, you know, I remember this. So it's just the respect. You have to understand that you don't want to become a habit because it's going to affect other areas of your life.
If parents start to see signs of addiction in their teens, if they start to see teens quitting activities, if they start to worry that their teenager is drunk or high, during the day or before school or, at night alone, these are things that are really troubling and dangerous signs. We want to get kids treatment early and immediately. Prevention really is possible. We can help kids to make smart decisions around drugs and alcohol. It's just that we need to start early. We need to be honest about the fact that drugs and alcohol will be present where they are socially, and we need to keep those lines of communication open so the kids can tell us if they're in trouble.
It's about talking about the why. Why is it that you want to try drugs and alcohol? Why are you trying to escape? Are you trying to numb? It's creating a dialogue around the why.
You do the next one and then can I try?
Sure. Yeah.
It's highly unrealistic to assume your kid is never going to try something, but it's about building a full life for your kid and healthy outlets and connection. The disease of addiction is really just a disease of isolation. And so it's about meaningful connections in their life and convincing them and showing them truly that they matter.
High five. Good job.
Yeah.